So if you look at them, at the corporations, you'd say success. Things really worked out great for the Native people. And it's true if you look at it in that fact and that view. But if you ask Native people, if you poll them, how much has the Claims Act really benefited them personally? I think there's a different story. The benefit for them was not land, because that went to the corporation's ownership. Didn't go to individuals. The corporations obtained the money and developed it into business, invested it. So money didn't come to the Native people unless it was some distribution of the original funds or there was a profit relating to a dividend payment. And that was, in most instances, once a year. And they were in the range from $50 to $100 every year if they were successful. And $1,000 if there was a distribution from the distribution account that was a large distribution. Some of it went directly to Native people. So I think they would be able to point to points in the history of their corporation where they earned a cash dividend, or they obtained a cash dividend. They didn't earn it, they obtained it. But that's the sole benefit in the majority of people. Younger people that were able to apply for scholarships that evolved, into the time period of 1970s into the 80s. Corporations started establishing scholarships. Young Native people were able to apply for those scholarships, help them in their education. That's a benefit. Now that's going to help them in many ways. It's going to help them in their future. So the lands, we got that. The Native people got that. That was their main effort. But now, talking to the Inc. Corporation, it's all the success in money. There's not very much discussion about the original Claims Act itself, the land. Mainly because most of it is secured through the ownership being tied directly to the corporation. No individual Native owns a part of the Claims Act settlement in their corporation unless that corporation has established a policy of shareholder land distribution. Most instances, that shareholder land policy does not allow a shareholder to own outright whatever land they get from the corporation. They're able to lease it or use it. They're never going to be able to own it, because the danger there is if they own it, run into trouble in their investment, they would sell it. Then you have an in-holding. So I'd say most of the corporations have that clause in there that the corporation lands are not to be owned by individual shareholders. It is tied solely to the corporation for security. But before the Claims Act, you had the Native Allotment Act, and you had individual Native people owning up to 160 acres. That's different. That's a different thing altogether. We're a corporation that's under the state of Alaska, formed under the state of Alaska through Alaska statutes. And we still have that, I think we have that volatility there. We're shareholders owning the corporation. But and I'm sure you probably heard this from other people, well, how many shares do I have as an original Class A shareholder? It's supposed to be 100 shares. I have 120 some shares, I think it is. Oh, why is that? Well, my mom and dad passed on. I was able to, they willed shares to me. And then my oldest son is a Class A shareholder. What happens to all the people born after 1971? They were never involved in the corporation. You have lots of what Doyon Unlimited called new natives, new Native people born after the Claims Act. There was 3 or 4 regional corporations that opened their rolls to include these new Native people in that qualified the blood quantum rule. that they had. And those new Native people were enrolled. So Doyen went from 9,000 to 16,000, I think it was, shareholders. And, but that was cut off. So now, but you're always having Native people being born. If they meet the blood quantum criteria, they're not part of the corporation. So there's a, you know, that's a big, what are we going to do? You know, when I say the corporation might be lost in 100 years, they'd have to convince the shareholders that the shareholders would either want to be bought out or sold, and some shareholders do want to be, they want to sell their shares and get out. They're not happy with this, with the corporations the way they are now. That's not the majority, there's just a few of those. But I think that's dangerous. How it's gonna get there, I don't know. I can't really tell, but there's a danger there. This heirship, when you're willing your shares, your Class A shares, to your children. In the first generation from the Class A shareholders, you have less shareholders, owners. You have a Native person owning 50%, 50 shares, or if you have a large family, you have all of the the family members owning 10 shares each of Class A shares. I think the new Native shares are life estate shares. And if they are, that means those new natives own those 100 shares, and when they die, those shares die too. They aren't willable. If that's the case with Doyon and the other regionals that have included new Native people. So is this equitable? Is this making us equal? Certainly not. We aren't equal. I own more shares than other Class A shareholders. Some of them own 200 shares. Some of them have more than that. So you can see in the first generation, not even the second generation, you have unequal shares. You have more control in one person, less control in lesser owners of shares. So, and there's changes going on. So the Native people, when this act was passed, you know, we seen something there in the future that might happen, but we didn't, at least as far as I know, we didn't contend too much ourselves with that. It was more implementation. How are we going to get the Claims Act going? How do we resolve our differences and trying to make it work? How do we get our land claims ownership? How do we do all of these things? Was way too much in front of us right now. That was too often to the future in a gray area that we didn't concern ourselves with. They need to start talking about them, and they need to start finding out where the ownership centers are located and how much of the sharers are not in Native control. Because through intermarriage, you have shares that are owned by non-Native people. They get the dividends, but they cannot vote their shares. So you have, I think, a growing number of shareholders that are not voting shareholders. I don't know what that number is. How do you get new Native people into the village corporations? I don't think there has been any village corporations that have involved new natives. I don't think, and at least I don't know of any. So where are those kids, first generation, and even second generation, in some cases third generation kids? Where are they? Are they involved in the village corporation? They may be through some willed shares, but the new natives, you know, the grandchildren, I have a grandson now, where's he going to be? You know, how does this affect him?